Welcome to the People section of the course. Now, PRINCE2 in the latest edition of PRINCE2 version 7, they have added a whole new chapter on people. And I was surprised by this a little bit because there is a whole chapter on organization which covers the roles and communication. And I think it was pretty well covered. So Nether, I'm going to ask you a question that I cannot answer. So let's see how you do. So, why do you believe PRINCE2 added a separate chapter on people in this latest version?
I do not agree with that decision. I believe it should have been in the organizing team or principle, practice as they call it now. But they've made it a separate element in parallel, probably to say that it's important.
That's for sure it's important because everything is around people.
It's not a good way of saying that something is important, but for me, for example, I would have added the extra content in organizing if there were any extra content. And we could change the name of the team from organizing into people. That could also be fine. And if it's super important, if it's fundamentally important, then we can add a new principle. A principle that is focused on people, something like that. But the way it is done like this, it's a little bit ad hoc, in my opinion. Because if you want to go like this, every 5 or 10 years, you will have something else that is considered important. And so you're going to keep adding things in parallel, things that also exist in other layers. That doesn't look like a good idea to me.
Yeah, thanks for that. So one of the key messages in the people chapter, it says, the purpose of a project is to deliver change. And PRINCE2 talks about how best to implement change. Okay, so it brings that element in there that wasn't there before. So I've actually got 3 questions. I'm going to ask you all at the one time because it makes it easier for me anyway. So first of all, what is change management? And is change management part of project management? And how does PRINCE2 see it? They're all kind of related.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing sometimes because when we talk about change, it can have 2 different meanings. One of them is changing the reality, which is done by creating a new output. When you run a project to build something, that's a change in our world. That thing didn't exist before.
When it's used,
and it exists now. Even if you don't use it, if it's just something somewhere and no one knows about it, it has changed the world.
Something, yes.
Yeah. So that's a change in output oriented type of change. But then on the other hand, and by the way, there's this definition of project in PRINCE2, and there it talks about change, and it's mainly about this, the old-fashioned the definition that was there all the time. But on the other hand, we have this concept of change, which is change in outcomes, which relates to the way we use things. And that part is relatively new to PRINCE2. It didn't exist before, at least that much with that attention, because it's about program management mainly.
So that's changing the way a company will work and use the service. So you're changing the organization to be able to use what the project will produce. Is that what we mean?
Yeah, well, the 2 types of change that we have here, one is organizational change management.
That's a better word.
Yeah. Organizational change management is about the outcomes you expect to have in a company. And that's really about program management, not project management. So you run multiple projects within a program and together they will deliver an organizational change. The reason it wasn't covered that much before is that PRINCE2 is not alone. It comes in a family. There's MSP for program management and MOP for portfolio management. And each of them is focused on one aspect. So in project management, we are contributing to that organizational change management. That's how it is done. But we are only contributing. We are not driving that. We are not leading that. There must be a program management system that does it. In the new version, the way they explain it, they bring it a little bit further than contribution. It's as if we are driving that. And
Yeah.
that's not really compatible with the whole package.
We just have to be aware that change management, organization change management will happen, but we don't have to take an active role in making it happen.
And you align yourself to the things that they are doing to make it
That's a better way to see it. Okay.
So that's one thing. And the other type of change management, which is typically called change control or integrated change control, that's about what happens inside the project. That's about the scope of the project. When the customer, for example, comes to you and says that I want this extra thing to be added to the project, you will go through a change control process. You will evaluate all the impacts. What's the impact on time? What's the cost, quality, risk, and so on. And based on that, you create one or more, preferably more than one proposal for the customer. That's change control, which is different from organizational change management.
Yeah, which leads to change request, which is change control as a way of managing change requests.
Yes.
Okay, good. The Dalai Lama he was in Australia once, he went for a pizza. And he asked for the pizza, it cost like $7. And he paid $10 for the pizza. And he got the pizza and he was waiting around for his change. And the change never come. And the Dalai Lama said to the guy behind the counter, he said, "Where's my change?" And the guy behind the counter said, "Change comes from within." I promise I won't tell any more jokes. It's a change joke, and I'm stuck. So, yeah.
Well, you're introducing a third type of change.
Okay.
It may come to the manual in the next
We can blank this out. There's two new terms which are introduced as well. They're called organizational ecosystem and project ecosystem. What's the difference? Make it easy on me.
Yeah, it's you can talk about ecosystem as a general type of thing. I never spent enough time understanding exactly what they mean by this in PRINCE2, especially because they don't expand it, they don't connect it to everything else. But for me, there's the organizational ecosystem. So if you consider it for your organization, it may not be compatible with PRINCE2, so you can correct me. It's a big ecosystem that contains all the services you have, different projects, programs, portfolios, your strategies, people involved in many different ways, internal and external, and so on. And then the project ecosystem would be a subset of that, although with some argument you can say that there's an overlap, some of it, a little bit of it is outside that. But overall, it's about understanding who your stakeholders are, what are different elements that impact the project or inspires the project, what are different constraints and so on.
Yeah, because we say stakeholders are people who can influence or be affected by the project. So maybe project organization is a way of defining those. And then everything outside that, which is also connected with the organization, could be the wider ecosystem, which, it's great. I've read it a couple of times. So, okay, but that's good though. Now, next question. Back to the scenario of the sports center. There is a disagreement on the design of the entrance. So people are having some problems with each other. This is affecting some people and the team culture. So what should the project manager do? We've got two options here. Should they try to keep everything under the carpet, under the rug? Or should they try to host meetings and try to build trust? Now remember, we're in the people chapter and it's a bit fluffy. So
You're making it very easy.
Yeah.
You're basically saying we have two options.
yeah,
The
sorry.
good option and the bad option. Which one is the right option?
yeah. Okay.
No,
But that's how some of the questions are phrased,
Yeah.
I mean, should you be nice to people? Yes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, if you ask me a question like that without giving the options, without having the exam in mind, there are many things to consider. One of them is responsibilities, because when it comes to the design, there are certain responsibilities. Some people would give you opinions, but they are not in the position to expect you to accept those opinions, but some are. So the first thing is distinguishing those. And then some people have the expertise to give opinion and some don't. So, for example, your customer who's paying you, they have the right to give opinions, but maybe they don't have the expertise. The supplier you have for designing, they have the expertise to give opinion about something. So the first thing is understanding these things, and then you want to balance everything. You may even want to involve people who don't have the rights just to create buy-in. You want to bring people together sometimes in order to generate more ideas. But sometimes you may say that it's not always like bring everyone together, be happy together. No, a good manager sometimes says that's enough. We don't want
we
to
have to make a
continue
decision.
we should make the decision. That company or that person is the responsible person. Whatever that person says will be the decision. That's a good manager.
Yeah.
Because sometimes nowadays you would see that resources talk about this thing as if it has to be always done by all people. You take your vote and so on.
Everybody has to be happy.
Yeah. One thing that is for sure is that we have to be proactive. So if there's a problem, if there's a situation, we should go and see what it is and what can be the solution and move toward that.
Okay, good. Right, this time I'll give you no input, okay? So, during a project, the project manager sees that the risk management procedure is not being used as they hear it's too heavy. So, the risk management procedure is important. So what should they do? For example, send out a strong communication and say, hey, just use it.
We do have the upfront tailoring, but then it's never enough. We must always have continuous tailoring as well. Now that's different. For example, in PRINCE2, we cannot start without upfront tailoring, but in some systems like P3 Express, we should start without upfront tailoring and only have continuous tailoring. But in all of them, what they have in common is the continuous tailoring. So you create the risk management approach, and then if you see that it's really heavy, too heavy for people, well, you should just fix it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not really heavy, but people say that it's heavy. They complain because they don't like it. Why do they not like it? Because maybe you didn't involve them in creating that.
Okay.
So that's a good idea to use them, because some of them can give you really good opinions. And on top of that, when they are involved in creating that process, you will have their buy-in. Chances are higher than they will be part of that. But in general, when you have a situation like that, it's probably a good idea to improve the process.
Yeah. So engage them, bring them in, ask them what the top things, agree the top things, and then agree a way to solve it. So the new procedure belongs to everybody in the room, not just the project manager.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what the people chapter says as well, which is great. So,
although when you work in a mature company, your risk management approach probably comes from the company and doesn't change too much in each project. So in a case like that, there won't be that much room for changing it based on what people inside the project want. But still, a good project manager would listen to those people, see if it's really helpful to make changes, and if it is, they will change it for the project and also reflect it back to the organizational departments that are responsible for it.
Based on what you just said about there could be a big procedure, so for a risk management procedure, the problem with that as seen is that those procedures are written for massive projects and they take everything into account. While if you're doing a smaller project, people might feel like, my God, this is a way over the top. This project is not going to change the world, or not like a multi-billion-dollar project or multi-million. It's going to be a 50,000 euro project, you know? So we don't need to spend this effort. And that's part of tailoring as well. So yeah. And the project manager cannot just say, take it off the shelf and use it. That's not fair.
Yeah, the organization is supposed to create something that is suitable to their projects. And sometimes they have more than one type of project. They have both large projects and small projects. In that case, it's better to have two different types of process for them.
Yeah.
And yet, as you said, sometimes they have something that doesn't make a lot of sense, and they still want to push it into all their projects.
Yeah.
Then the question is, what would you do as a project manager?
Well, I don't know, but I'm just thinking of something else. Every update of a central management procedure is always adding new stuff on. It's never taking stuff away. So it just gets more and more complicated each year.
That's a maximalist mindset, yes,
Yeah.
to improve things by adding to them. There's also the minimalist mindset that improves things by removing, usually.
Yeah, which is as important. Yeah.
So you didn't answer. What would you do as a project manager if you go and they give you a process for risk management, a risk management approach from the organization, and you see that it's really, really too heavy for the project?
I would start crying, possibly. That's a good response. It always worked for me to get decisions, you know, because then people feel sorry for you and they'll help. No. Okay, so you try to speak to other people, I suppose, what approach they use. You speak to who's responsible, and you try to invite people to a meeting to discuss it. Maybe there are other people, or maybe you're missing some knowledge about something. So there's lots of different ways. But definitely communicate to other people.
Let me help you, because that's a scenario I've seen. Everyone else is trying to use that, and because that's too heavy, they just fill in the documents. It's not effective, really. But they all do it in all projects, all other project managers. Who to talk to? There is someone, but he doesn't listen to you. And who would you invite to the meeting? You call them, but they don't respond. So what would you do next?
Well, I'm not always the person who follows the rules, so perhaps I just wouldn't fill it in, and no one's going to read it anyway, so no one's going to find out. I'll just use my own approach and keep quiet. You know me. It's not the correct answer, but that's what people do. They get frustrated.
Yeah, of course. I also won't do that. If it doesn't make sense to me, I won't do it. And if the company keeps nagging, I would say, that's it. If you don't want it, I will resign. Bring someone who follows your process. If you want to do it properly, we can sit down together and make something better that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine there's a lot of people filling in forms that they know, but they have a mortgage to pay, and they cannot take that decision, so they just go with it and fill it in, which is a pity. Yeah.
Or they have someone, an intern, who fills in all the documents for them.
Or you can find someone on Upwork to do it. That's a good idea. Or ChatGPT fill it in for you. That's good. Okay, let's move on. Back to the sports center. So we have a legal consultant who is important for the project, but they have moved on to a new project. So a new legal person is appointed. Now, what should the project manager do? And I give three choices here. Should they ask the project executive to brief them on the project?
No.
Should they do nothing and just send the next legal deliverable when ready, because there's no point in getting overexcited?
No.
Should they do a briefing and get their feedback.
Yes.
Why?
When you have someone new to the project, you want that person to be involved and engaged.
Engaged, yeah.
You have to facilitate that introduction, that onboarding. And the best person to do that is the project manager or someone who's working with the project manager, not people above the project manager.
Yeah.
The project executive is not involved in the day-to-day things. They are all about directing the project from high level.
Okay, that's good. And that's something that's in the people chapter, which actually I like, but it's mainly focused on the people part of it and engagement and setting up a good environment for people to work in. All right.
And when it's a bigger project, the project manager cannot do it for everyone.
Correct.
So there will be a hierarchy. So someone who works in the project management team will be responsible for each new person or something like that.
Yeah, for bigger projects, I like the term onboarding of people. So maybe there's even for bigger projects, there's a procedure to bring people onto the project to update them as well. That can be. And that's actually not a bad idea for really bigger projects. So they hit the ground running, they know exactly what to do, they know how to participate, and they're brought up to date. Otherwise, they have to learn bit by bit, and maybe they're afraid to ask questions, then they make mistakes. So it can be a lot of time delays. Yeah, so an onboarding procedure is good.
So, a question.
Oh no.
Someone new comes to the project.
Yeah.
And you can give them one of the project documents to read and understand the project. Gain the best understanding of the project. Which document would you give them?
It's a choice of two, the high-level project plan or the business case. The good thing about the business case is it gives you the why information in there, the reasons, and because it has the benefits as well, so they can see the importance of it. Project plan is also good because it shows them what's next. Because it shows them the scope of the project, what's going to be there. But I am...
How about the project product description instead of project plan?
That's the high-level scope of the project. That's a good document to give, but does it have the reasons why and what the benefits are? If they have the why, the what, and the how, the what and the benefits, then they have everything. But that's, with the project product description, we only give the what, a high-level description of the what.
Yeah. So how about project product description and business case? Together would be...
When you asked that question, the first thing that came into mind was the project brief, because it contains that at the very beginning. But during the project, that information has changed. So I didn't want to say that anymore.
Yeah. I thought you would say project initiation documentation, which was cheating, but you didn't say it. But because that's a package that contains everything.
That's like saying everything, yeah. Okay.
In many projects, they have a high-level document, a brief thing that is created at the beginning and remains until the end, like the project charter that the PMBOK guide talks about and many other resources, or the project description in P3 Express. They are really great for onboarding. Project brief is more or less like that, but it's a temporary document in PRINCE2.
It's put away. It's hidden. Once you go through
the
first...
it's replaced with project initiation documentation. So some people, for example, say that project brief in PRINCE2 is like project charter in PMBOK guide and other resources, which is not really the case. Because
I said that
project charter remains there until the end of the project.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, next question. Again, back to the sports center. So in the city where they're going to build the sports center, they have a green party and they're very active in the city and they follow all new major constructions. Okay, so they have concerns about the new city sports center. So how should the project manager best communicate with them? One is, the less information, the better, because then they're going to have less complaints. That's one strategy. It's a good strategy for the Green Party because they get upset about everything. I've just upset 5% of the audience now. I was joking, by the way, I love every color. And I'm Irish. I love green. So
Yeah, we don't want to be passive. We want to be active, and
yeah,
because if you try to hide something, it will just pile up and cause bigger problems in the future.
yeah, yeah. So we should be open about our project. Definitely. Okay. Arrange meetings to exchange information and concerns with the Green Party.
That's a good idea. Well, actually, what happens here, if you want to formulate it based on PRINCE2 and other project management systems, is that the Green Party has some power
Mm.
and they can use it to impact the project, which means that they are a stakeholder. And like other stakeholders, we have to listen to them, understand what they want,
Yeah.
and solve the contradictions that we have between their requirements and requirements from other people.
Hmm. Like the example you mentioned a while ago with influencers. They're a powerful influencer, so we should engage with them as soon as possible and upfront, yeah, and get them on the project side and make sure we solve their concerns. Another good option actually is to assign one of them a senior user so they become responsible for the project. I have my
Well,
poker face now.
yeah, you want to say no, but actually, that's a good political decision.
Okay, Prince2 doesn't agree with you, but
Well,
I see what you
well,
mean. Yeah.
But they are representing some of the users. They are a subset of users, aren't they?
Let's just say they're a political influence on the project. I don't think they could bring, in this instance, they wouldn't bring much demand, except they would like maybe to make noise about how they're involved in the project. But what input would they have for a sports center? Probably not much, but to come and have coffee and biscuits, and to be seen.
Well, we are. I think you're taking sides. So think of it as they are a group of people with concerns. And as a project manager, I may or may not agree with them, but they are my stakeholders and I have to listen to their concerns. Now, if you want to bring them to the project board as user representatives, there's no contradiction because they are really users, they are a subset of users. It will be a
Correct.
problem
Yeah.
if we have only, for example, 3 senior users and one of them comes from this group. Then this group becomes overrepresented in the
Yeah.
project board. So you have to balance it. If you think you can balance it by having enough number of people, we also don't want to have 20 people
Yes.
in the board.
That's what I was thinking about.
If you
Yeah.
can do it with 5 or 6 people, really balance it, and one of them comes from the that community, I think that's a good idea because then
It can be.
it can work and you will have their buy-in in the project.
Okay. I think I've asked you enough questions already, so we can leave the rest of the questions to the next video.
Okay.
So, see you on part 2 of People.